Hello, my name is Andrew Thake. Delighted to be joined today by John Welborn, who's an executive chair at Fenix. Delighted to have you with us today, John.
Great to be here, Andrew.
John, we've heard a lot about Fenix recently, and what to me seems really exciting about what Fenix are doing is that you've moved towards a fully integrated logistics model, i.e. owning the mine to port chain. How has this vertical integration specifically insulated Fenix from the cost volatility that has perhaps impacted other mid-tier iron ore producers?
I think the obvious answer, Andrew, is that we have control over the key cost drivers of our business. So for people who are not familiar with Fenix, we're an iron ore producer. We're in Western Australia, but we're not in the Pilbara. We're in the Midwest of Western Australia, which is in and around Geraldton. So we have a port business, we have a haulage business, and we have a mining business. And the integrated supply chain that you described is that we mine some of the highest grade ore in Western Australia in iron ore, and then we haul that ore 500 kilometres on public roads. So we're not operating a railway. We have a very high-tech, very sophisticated haulage business. And that integrates with our port business where we store and then ship to our customers internationally. And so it means that we're very aware of all of our costs. It means that we can regulate the changes in the business and adjust them accordingly. We're not dealing with contractors, and we have the ability to manage the business.
With the iron ore project being a high grade but relatively short life asset, what is the strategic roadmap for mine life extension or new acquisitions to maintain Fenix production profile?
Well, last year we had a game-changing announcement, Andrew. So originally, Fenix commissioned the Iron Ridge mine, and that was a very high-grade but short mine life asset. Last year, we secured an exclusive 30-year right to mine the Weld Range project, and that is 300 million tonnes of high-grade direct shipping ore owned by Sinosteel, which is in turn owned by Baosteel, the largest steel maker in the world, a Chinese state-owned enterprise. And so that gives Fenix the opportunity to ramp up our operations. So we've transitioned to a long life asset, and that allowed us on the 23rd of December 2025. So apologies that you might have missed it, but we published a scoping study around our ambition to use that now very much expanded resource base to build a 10 million tonne a year mine. So initially, 3 years ago, Fenix was a 1.5 million tonne producer. Today, we're a 4.5 million tonne producer from 3 mines. And over the next 3 years, we're going to transition the business again to be a long life 10 million tonne a year miner. It's an incredibly exciting opportunity and will put us in the big time of iron ore exporters from Western Australia. And we know that that's a business that has made the richest people in Australia wealthy, and the largest mining companies in Australia are built on the back of these big bulk commodity iron ore projects.
Yeah, and I guess kind of connected to that, I guess the recent acquisition of the Geraldton Port assets is just changing your identity from a mining company to I guess for want of a better phrase, a broader infrastructure and logistics provider. Would you say that that's fair?
It is. So part of that transition is recognising, and the control of our integrated supply chain is effectively an infrastructure business. So we have assets at Geraldton Port that provide us with the opportunity to export significantly more than the 10 million tonnes we're aiming for. That the availability of deep water ports has constrained projects up and down the Western Australian coast for generations. And the plans to build ports at places like Oakajee and Balla and Cape Preston East and others. Port Hedland, the major iron ore exporting hub up in the Pilbara, produces a significant percentage of the world's seaborne iron ore. Geraldton is a port where Fenix, as you can see in the image behind me, controls infrastructure that gives us a huge opportunity. So yes, that infrastructure is important, as is our ability to demonstrate low cost, efficient, safe road haulage. And matching that with our mines is a very exciting opportunity for the company.
In a fluctuating iron ore price environment, how does a company like Fenix balance the drive for volume with the necessity of maintaining higher grade premiums for its lumps and fines products?
Very interesting question. We obviously have been very successful in hedging the iron ore price opportunistically, and we at any one point at the moment we've got about 1.2 million tonnes hedged at prices around 150 Australian dollars. Given that our current guidance for our C1 cash cost is 75 Australian dollars, as in we're mining, hauling, and putting iron ore in boats in Geraldton ready to send to our customers for 75 Australian dollars. You can see that we're locking in a strong margin with that hedging. However, the answer to your question is that we don't see hedging as sustaining our margin. The only way we can do that is controlling our costs. And so the balance around the products that we produce and the cost that we produce them at and the scale is intricately linked. Having the resource base we now have, we're very confident that we're getting back to the age-old reality that the more you produce, the more benefit you get from scale and the lower the unit costs were. So the scoping study that I mentioned earlier is around increasing our investment in infrastructure, moving our public road trades onto private haul roads, allowing us to increase scale and get the benefit of extra volume. So to put it simply, we are transitioning from a low volume, high cost business to a high volume, low cost business. And you'll see that when you look at the NPV of our studies, and you'll increasingly see that in our earnings and our ability to reward shareholders with dividends.
One of the most used or perhaps overused phrases of the last 5 to 10 years in the mining industry is the word critical mineral. And the next question is a bit around sort of like iron ore and whether we should see it as a critical mineral or a strategic mineral. As global capital has, shifted towards green metals such as lithium, copper, nickel, how do you argue for the continued relevance and investability of bulk commodities like iron ore in modern portfolios? And would you see iron ore as a critical mineral?
Well, first of all, it's not whether I see iron ore as a critical mineral. Much more interesting is that last month, the US government added iron ore to their list of critical minerals. So I do is the answer, Andrew, but much more importantly, so does the US government. However, obviously I can be jealous of my friends who are in tungsten deposits or rare earth deposits or the copper and nickel and the projects that are getting huge investor attention and government support around the critical mineral focus. What I would say is that all of those metals and commodities are effectively a derivative, in my view, of steel. If you're interested in those metals because of energy transition, well, you can't build wind farms, you can't build solar farms without steel. If you're interested in those minerals because of military applications and the use of tungsten, for example, in armor plating, well, then we're talking about an investment that actually requires an enormous amount of steel. So I don't think you can be bullish on any of the critical minerals without being bullish on steel and therefore bullish on iron ore. It's a massive. The other thing is that I'm not in a commodity where I need to worry about offtake or supply. This is a huge industry. It is, the billions of tons of iron ore. We have an opportunity. We have very, very strong demand for all of our products. And so, yes, while I can be jealous of the investor appetite in some of those critical minerals, I think that Fenix is going to benefit from the reality that iron ore prices have outperformed analyst forecasts year on year over the past decade. They will continue to do so for the reasons that we see such interest in critical minerals and the reality that all of those critical minerals in their application are effectively a derivative of steel, and therefore we need and will require ongoing secure supplies of iron ore.
Just time for one last question. How has your background in professional sports influenced your approach to building high performance teams within the technical and often siloed environment of a mining company?
Well, that's a bit of a change of tack, and thanks for the question. For people who are familiar with me as a former gold miner or now an iron ore miner, I was a rugby union player, and during a period of time where Australia was very successful, but also had the opportunity to play internationally. So, look, the obvious, we referred earlier in this discussion around Fenix's integrated supply chain and the ability for us to build a business that brings our mining skills together with our haulage and logistics skills together with our port marketing and offtake skills together with our marketing team. So that's not dissimilar to a rugby team being able to actually harness the skills of front rowers, which are very different athletes and very different mentalities, for example, than halfbacks or wingers and second rowers. So look, my background in professional sport was all about high performance. It was about teamwork, and it was about achieving goals and ambitions. And I'm as excited about my teammates and colleagues at Fenix and our partners, within and without the business, as I was about any of the teams that I played for in the 90s and 2000s. So I think that background, one, it gives me a very strong connection with the passion, teamwork, and endeavour that's required to achieve great things. But also it's about the enjoyment, because one of the great things about sport is, although obviously you don't always achieve victory, you understand the skills and the importance of how you get there. And most importantly, the importance of celebrating the journey with your fellow travellers. So hopefully I continue to build on those experiences, Andrew, at Fenix, and particularly with the people I work with.
Well, we're really looking forward to meeting you at Resourcing Tomorrow again this year. That was John Welborn, Executive Chair of Fenix. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.